has not broadcast any of these questions does not make it other than a matter of the highest public interest. And of course, if our Prime Minister has left himself open to blackmail, well, arguably, we need to know that even more. Because if any minister, Keir Starmer or any Prime Minister, has left himself open to blackmail, that means our country and its interests are open to blackmail. How could we know that a particular course of policy, either domestic or foreign, had not been influenced by a prime ministerial vulnerability to blackmail? So I think the country needs to be told. And on the face of it, we have a mystery here that simply must be addressed.
Craig, based on your research then, how prolific do you think the people at the top have been compromised?
Potentially massively, and this may be why we're not hearing a lot about it. And as George alludes to, if the security of your country's been compromised by potentially the Prime Minister's actions as Prime Minister or previous to becoming Prime Minister, then that is a real big concern. This story is massive. Either way, whether it's a state-funded action against our Prime Minister or something from his personal private past, either way, the implications are huge. And it beggars belief. I really don't know, unless there's some super injunctions that have been put out, and that's possibly why some are not wanting to talk about it. But it beggars belief that this big case, such a dangerous thing, is practically all we're getting is the basic little bits of bread put out. There's no feast at the back of it, and I find that most peculiar.
Indeed. And let's do a quick poll of the viewers then. Viewers, please put a 1 in the chat if you think this arsonist is involved in an alleged lover's spat. Put a 2 in the chat if you think the suspect is some kind of honey trap, intelligence, compromising politician situation. Put a 3 in the chat if you think there is nothing suspicious here. Keir Starmer's properties have been targeted for matters completely unrelated to 1 or 2. Looks like we've got lots of 1s coming in. Lots of 1s. Most people are going for the spat. A few 2s. And also, if you've not yet subscribed to Craig's channel, I'm putting the link in the live chat. The link is also at the top of the description if you're watching this on replay, as is a link to his X. So you can watch him over there. Let's get a bit more Galloway. I think he's finished this soon.
How did a 21-year-old Ukrainian male model know the address of properties owned by Keir Starmer in the 1990s? How did he know the identity of a motor vehicle which has not been owned by Keir Starmer for some years? These are vitally important questions. And millions of people who have responded to me on social media demonstrate amply that these are matters of public interest
and national security.
And so, who's going to answer them? I call on the Prime Minister to make clear if he knows or has ever met the individuals who have been arrested for alleged arson attacks on his property. I want to know if the Prime Minister knows them. I want to know what the Prime Minister knows and when he knew it. I don't want to be the George Whig in this picture. And George Whig had parliamentary privilege and used it ruthlessly to get to the truth of the Profumo affair in the early 1960s. I have no parliamentary privilege, but I do have a voice that is heard. And so I'm asking on behalf of, I believe, a substantial section of the British public and the international community at that. Did Kier Starmer ever meet the 21-year-old male model now under arrest and charged with arson attacks against his property, current and former? Now, I mentioned a significant new fact that emerged last evening, which is that a second man, this time not 21, but 26, a 26-year-old man was arrested by police at Luton Airport, where he or she, or however they identify, was seeking to board a plane. We have no idea of the identity of that 26-year-old man, even though it caused quite a kerfuffle at Luton Airport when they were arrested. We deserve to know. It would be significant to know. For example, if the person arrested, the 26-year-old man, if he was a Ukrainian. It would be important to know if he was a male model. It would be important to know if he was in any way connected to organized crime. It would be important to know if he was seeking to fly, I don't know, to Russia or to Israel or some other place. It's normal in Britain for the basic identity of people arrested in a high-profile swoop on one of Britain's great airports. It would be normal for basic biographical details to be released.
And do you think by not releasing those details, they're just making the whole thing even more suspicious, Craig?
Yeah, as I said earlier, you know, the public right now, and have done for probably a decade and a half, we require instant information, and that's a byproduct of social media. We expect it, but, you know, regardless of whether it's a football story, this a thing like this, national security, and when there is a real vacuum and void, then that void will get filled by people's suggestion thing. And people went to jail in the summer for putting, you know, filling in the gaps of the Rudy Cabana case, and some of them were actually spot on. So it's a strange world we live in. And the thing that worries me, Shaun, I'm a relatively small YouTube channel with relatively short time in this game. But I think I would be better at advising people in their PR and how to control information than the people that are running our country. And some of the things that they do, particularly in Scotland, I do a lot of stuff about Scottish Government, SNP, who are particularly bad. And you just scratch your head. You think, how stupid can you be? I think we give these people more credence than they're actually due. And these people must know more about how the public think, you know, with voice and social media than you and I. Yet seem to make mistakes time and time again. It really is pretty pathetic.
Yeah, it echoes, you know, our research into Savile and, you know, members of Thatcher's cabinet, going back to Ted Heath even, Cyril Smith. You know, it's all rather obvious now how compromised so many of those top political figures were. And this network that we believe Savile was procuring for and supplying to still exists to this day. And occasionally something bizarre will happen and the network will reveal itself.
Yeah,
For example,
sorry, there was a thought crossed my mind last night. The two occupations that are probably most likely statistically to get up to strange things in bedrooms are politicians and lawyers, or people in the legal industry. Imagine being both. You must be the most likely person in the history of the world to be up to some strange things if you are a politician and or a lawyer. So to be both kind of blows the whole thing. So on George, there's two things I like about George. There's loads of things I don't, right? But that's human nature. We don't agree on everything. And the only two things I really like about George is, one, he stood up at the referendum and was very outspoken about protecting the union, and I'm a unionist, so I kind of like that. And the other thing is a new thing, which I quite like, and that's the way he pronounces Ukrainians. Either George is just inventing words, or I've been saying Ukrainians incorrectly for my whole adult life.
Well, going back to Starmer then, his behavior is extremely inappropriate in many areas of life, and we've interviewed several survivors of grooming gangs on this channel, heard absolute horror stories of what these young women went through, teenagers when it happened to them, just kids. And yet he voted against the investigation into the grooming gangs back in January, thus enabling this criminal apparatus. I mean, one of the girls that we interviewed, they were transporting her. The orders were coming from the prison system. They were continuing to run the operation from the prison system. And the groomers got slaps on the wrist. They come out, go back to their families who accept them, because they just look down on these white teenage girls with mini skirts on who are getting drunk as if they deserve it. As if they deserve it. So Keir Starmer loves these people. He's enabling these people. He's protecting these people. You know, we had Raja Mir on, who said it's all about the votes. Doesn't want to disrupt relations, race relations in these communities. Keep the votes flowing. Meanwhile, enabling the R-wording of young girls in this country on an industrial scale. It's absolutely obscene. And Maggie Oliver has been a friend of the channel for over 5 years, who broke a lot of this. She said to us that whatever party gets in control, the other parties just pick on them and weaponize them for not doing anything about it. But as soon as any of the other parties get in control, they just say the same thing. We apologize. Changes have been made. This isn't going to happen in the future, but nothing ever changes.
No, the only thing that changes is the colour of the rosette, Shaun. That seems to be the most disappointing thing for me.
It's obscene that this is being allowed to happen to so many girls, and these politicians are not standing up. I mean, you think the justice system would be to protect the kids and the women?
Well,
it's not.
There's a bit of a strange fact about my life. I am a massive Rangers fan, and that 10 years ago, I was quite publicly campaigning to move on an old board that were controlling Rangers at the time, and that campaign lasted about 3 years and was ultimately successful. But quite an unusual thing about me is, when I was a child, I played football for Celtic Boys Club. The Celtic Boys Club, most people north of the border will be well aware of this, are currently going through a class action lawsuit because of the amount of, there's 9, I think, different individuals from the Boys Club who have been found guilty in a court of law for sexually abusing young boys. And I was there. I was in the middle of it, and thank God, just touch wood, that I was safe from it. But when you grow up and these stories start coming out, and you think back, you think of the situations, I was just lucky. That was all. So I've got a particular concern about the safety of children. So it's a thing that's close to my heart. And I've been a youth football coach as a volunteer for 16 years, and I started my own club about 9 years ago. And the things that are in place to safeguard kids are still not good enough. We use the Scottish Football Association's child protection guidelines as a minimum and a starting point for our club. And if we see we want to raise the bar on any particular thing, then I'll do so. And I think the amount of people that have protected paedophiles through all different things, the grooming gangs, through sport, through boys' brigades, through childcare settings across the nation is absolutely despicable. I'm trying to get into Holyrood in 2026 as an MSP, and I'll make it one of the things that I would do, not to win votes, because I think it's the right thing to do, is uncover as much of this as possible and hold them accountable. Anybody who'd done these things or protected these people, they need publicly outed, and then society will decide for itself what it does with them after that. But it's a thing that sickens me because of my close connections and just a lucky boy that I wasn't a victim myself, but I do know people that half the team that I played in were abused. So it's a topic that is very close to my heart, and something that society just needs to out every single last person that was either involved or covered it up, and that is regardless of their religion or their skin colour or their nationality.